Recently, I came across an article that Shane Hurlbut had put together, and he was talking about shooting with the GH4, specifically with Vlog-L, recording to an external recorder, and finding that sweet spot of exposure on the GH4. And in his article, which I'll link to in the description below because I think you should definitely check it out, he mentions that you should shoot the GH4 with Vlog-L underexposed by 1 stop, or 2/3 of a stop. Now, that goes against almost everyone's preconceived common knowledge about Vlog-L, that you want to overexpose by 2 stops and then bring it all down in post, and that will give you the best performance. Because a lot of people who started shooting with Vlog-L immediately were saying that the footage was really noisy, they didn't like how it looked, and everyone came back with the advice that you need to shoot overexposed, bring it down, and that'll give you perfect Vlog-L footage on the GH4. Well, this Shane Hurlbut article, people are talking about like, oh, this is crazy. What's he talking about? Shooting underexposed, that's going to ruin your footage. And then other people are like, oh no, that's what I do. So it's kind of a point of controversy. And I think the reason for that is that anytime we're talking about subjective opinions, right? Shane Hurlbut, like what he likes the look of, that's essentially what it boils down to. There's always a reason to justify your subjective viewpoint. So whether Shane likes to shoot under or I like to shoot over, we both can have our reasons as to why we like what we like. And so it's really important when you're watching my videos or you're reading blog articles from other people that you're understanding that these things that are subjective in nature, which almost everything creative is, there are some hard rules, like, right? Like people can't see if you leave your lens cap on when you're recording, that like you should take your lens cap off, right? That's kind of an objective point of truth, but the subjective stuff as to what looks good and what's acceptable in terms of noise or dynamic range or color and all these things, it's really down to the preference of the individual who's talking about it. So any video where I say, oh, this is what I do, or this is what you should do, this is what I recommend, it really just is that. It's a recommendation, it's a suggestion as to what I like to do that gives me footage that I like. That doesn't mean that it's what you have to do unless you like the footage that I like. Maybe we share similar opinions, so then you're more believing and accepting of my subjective reasoning. But it really just is that. It's just my opinion, and I might have reasons for it, but there's very good reasons to do things opposite in certain situations. And sometimes I'm not always consistent on my advice. I say, oh, you got to follow the 180-degree shutter angle rule. And I firmly believe that, but there are times where I cheat, right? Like I've made videos in this room and the lighting has been terrible. And so I've opened my shutter up to 360 degrees to let more light in, and breaking my own recommendation, right? So anytime there's a subjective thing, you can always reason as to why it should be done one way or the other. And it's up to you to figure out if you believe that person, and really it just comes down to you testing it on your own and figuring out if what they're saying applies to your situation. So in this case with Shane, where he's talking about underexposure, what I gather from the article really is he's looking at skin tones. He's looking at the actor or the model's face and how he likes the skin tone to look. Now, everyone's got a different opinion as to what perfect skin tones are, and there is some science to it, but it still is fairly subjective, and he is focused solely on the actor or the model, whereas other people who shoot Vlog-L might be focused on the whole scene and just trying to retain all the dynamic range of the scene, whether there's highlights in the background or in the foreground or on the face or somewhere else. And then maybe they're more concerned about the noise, right? Maybe they're recording internally and Shane was recording externally. So there's all these factors at play, and you really have to take it into your own hands and see, okay, if I follow that, is that going to work well for what I shoot and what I do? Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You could go listen to me or someone else tell you how to do something, and we could tell you something and you do it and it doesn't turn out the way that you want it to, because you were just listening blindly. Listening, those are two different senses, but regardless, you're just following someone blindly. How about that? Following someone blindly rather than thinking through it and figuring out if it's actually going to apply to what you do. And that's what's most important. So whether you want to see this article that Shane put out saying that you need to underexpose the GH4 when shooting Vlog-L by 1 stop, maybe that works really well for the kind of stuff that you do, and you like the way the skin tones look in those situations. Or maybe you have shot V-Log-L underexposed and you hate it and it doesn't work for your format. You love to shoot over by 1 stop or over by 1.5 stops or over by 2 stops and bring it down in post. Whatever it is that works for you is likely all that matters, because again, we're talking about subjective opinions. And these things aren't hard set rules where, oh, you always need to underexpose the GH4 by 1 stop, or you always need to overexpose by 1 or 2 stops. It really just depends on the shooter. It depends on the situation, depends on the environment, it depends on a bunch of different factors. And the way you shoot is unique to you, and there's no other person out there who can, unless you're just copying someone 100%, which I guess then maybe you just listen to everything they say. But if you have your own way of doing it, no one can give you perfect advice for you unless they're right next to you on the shoot. So that's why it's really important that watch test videos, look at other people's recommendations, see what other people are doing, and then try it out for yourself, because that's the most important thing for you to do. Don't just follow me or anyone else blindly and just listen to what we have to say and take it as gospel, because it really is up to the individual. So go out there, do your own test shots, figure out what works the best for your camera and your setup, and go from there.